Purchasing companies need to take responsibility for the decisions they make when selecting suppliers and take steps to understand and address the risks that are associated with modern slavery and labour exploitation.
As a Tier 1 contractor, it's really important that our supply chain complies with the Act. We expect as a minimum that they would produce a statement if their company is large enough, but we expect all companies, all of our supply chain, to take the steps they need to reduce the risk of having slaves or people in forced labour working in their company. So that might be that they check the right to work in the UK, they check that they're not all living at the same address, and just try to identify any instances of slavery. That's the first thing. The second thing is we expect them to also ask the appropriate checks of their own supply chain and make sure that they're not using subcontractors or operatives that are also at risk of slavery.
What we're looking for our supply chains to do in order to comply with the Act, I think you nearly need to break down what different sorts of supply, because there's supply of agency staff, so in other words people that we employ who will look like Interserve staff and employed on the same sites doing the same job as people who are employed by Interserve. There's subcontractors who we bring on site, and then there's our supply chains where we have things like food which are grown all around the world. And the first two, agency staff and subcontractors, are where the highest risk, although not necessarily the highest probability, but the highest risk to Interserve are in terms of slavery, in that we actually bring those people on site and onto our client sites, and actually it's really important that we don't do that. So we need to make sure that the terms and conditions we have with our agency that employ workers for us, that they are set up, that they do in their recruitment they look for slavery, and that they've got process and procedures to identify it and to follow it up where it occurs. And in the subcontractors, I guess you could see it's, you know, a load of blokes turn up in a white van. Do we know where they're from, what they're doing, and what do we know about them? Well, actually it's really important that we manage that, and that we understand who we're bringing on site, and that we recognise where if those people are slaves, and that we give those people, if they are slaves, a chance to understand where they can actually report about it and help free themselves. If you look at our supply chains, then I suspect that the probability of slavery in some other countries is greater than in the UK, but equally it's probably in our supplier. It's in the supply chain but further away from us, and therefore it's a lot harder to do something about. So contractually we want to make sure that our suppliers are required to identify ethical risk in their supply chains and have a plan to address it, but equally we need to recognise it's a much tougher problem than actually when you actually physically see the person and you can actually interact with that person and to understand whether they are a slave.